2nd F-102A Operational Squadron, Duluth, Minnesota.
During the middle of August, a military transport landed at Lindbergh Field in San Diego on a special mission, Operation Diplomacy. The Continental Air Defense Command, in cooperation with Convair, played host to this group of civic leaders from Duluth, Minnesota, where the 11th Fighter Interceptor Squadron, equipped with F-102A jet interceptor fighters, is based. The group was first shown the complete operation of CONAD in Colorado Springs. The purpose of this program is to develop a better understanding with those communities near Air Force bases where supersonic aircraft are employed in the defense of our country. Mr. A.W. Morgan extended a warm welcome to Mayor Eugene Lambert, and last-minute instructions were passed out individually to each visitor. Dick Johnson, chief test pilot at Edwards Air Force Base on the F-102A program, discussed the airplane with Mayor Lambert. With all arrangements completed and introductions over, the groups were taken to their respective lodgings. The next morning, the visitors were given a complete tour of engineering, the wind tunnel, digital and analog computer sections, and then to watch the fabrication of the airplanes on the assembly line. After a hot luncheon, the group gathered to inspect an airplane ready for the flight line. Then out to the field as an F-102A taxis into position for takeoff. Watching this airplane take off for the first time is a new sensation. The civic leaders from Duluth were impressed with what they had seen and could go back and tell their fellow citizens the story of the F-102A supersonic interceptor fighter and the importance of the new weapon to a more effective air defense system. Several days later, Major General J.V. Crabb and Colonel R.L. Gould arrived at the Palmdale Air Force Base facility and made ready to take delivery on the first two F-102As for the 11th Fighter Interceptor Squadron based at Duluth, Minnesota. Captain Torres was on hand to aid the pilots in checking out their respective airplanes. Although the general had flown in other F-102s, he planned to give this one several check flights before departure for Duluth. His regular job with the Air Force is commanding general of the Central Air Defense Command, which comprises 21 states from Canada to the Mexican border. Checkout Flight 1 was underway. The general was in the air for more than an hour, and on landing, discussed the flight characteristics of the airplane with the contractor's Palmdale representatives and Air Force Plant 42 officer, Captain Don Butterfield. He told Rex Warden, Convair chief test pilot at Palmdale, that he enjoyed flying the F-102A very much and was pleased with its performance. The following day, after final checkout, General Crabb fueled up and was ready for takeoff. Later that day, after a stop at Albuquerque and Tinker Air Force Base, they were approaching Grand View Air Force Base. Landing here, the planes were serviced and made ready for departure the next morning. The airplanes were quickly airborne the next morning on the final lap. A leisurely flight was made because of weather and darkness policies affecting new aircraft. As the planes zoomed across Minnesota, the scenery below was in great contrast to the desert areas that were left behind. Before landing, the pilots made 2 passes over the Duluth base at speeds considerably less than the craft's capabilities. The arrival of these first 2 Delta Wing supersonic jet fighters marked a new milestone in the progress of military preparedness in this area. Colonel Robert Gould was the first pilot to climb from his airplane and described it as a sweet aircraft. A warm ovation is given the pilots, and a new era is in the making for the 11th Fighter Interceptor Squadron. Once again, we meet Mayor Lambert of Duluth, Minnesota, who extends a cordial greeting to General Crabb and Colonel Gould. The engines are not even cool before the squadron's insignia is brought out and placed on the fuselage. Lieutenant Colonel Pappy Myers, commander of the 11th Fighter Interceptor Squadron, inspected the aircraft with Colonel Gould and Captain Paul Hartz. Colonel Myers, responsible for readying Duluth pilots for the new aircraft, said the sonic boom will not be heard in the vicinity of Duluth except under emergency circumstances. Thus, when the 11th Fighter Interceptor Squadron receives its full complement of F-102As, it will be the second supersonic squadron in the United States Air Force.
F-102A large tail production and flight test.
During the middle of June this year, at the contractor's Palmdale facility, work was begun on the F-102A big tail modification program. Experimental airplanes were flown with the initial big tails. The modification program was instigated on the basis of these flight tests. Changeover to the big tails involved considerable equipment, parts, and manpower. A system for accomplishing this work in the most effective manner was set in motion. Tips, leading edges, and access doors are removed, and the old tail is carried away. The vertical spars are cut off at 25 inches above the fuselage. This is for the purpose of attaching a jig to the rough-cut spars. The jigs are applied to the spars, and they are scribed so they can be cut for a precise fit. With the box section in place, the spars are spliced in. Ribs are installed, 2 in each bay. With the new tail section securely fitted in the slot of the old tail, it is ready for skin fabrication. The skins are placed against the box and drilled out for bolts and rivets. After all drilling and fitting, the skins are temporarily removed, and the structure is bought off by inspection. After acceptance, the skin is placed on the box section and attached firmly with bolts and rivets. Electrical connections, control cables, and the plumbing are replaced. The rudder installation completes the job, and the control system is given a complete operational check. After approval and acceptance, the tail is ready for painting and identification numbers. Even under difficult working conditions, the number of man-hours per tail modification is rapidly being reduced, and the big tail modifications, all of which take place at Palmdale, are rolling out on schedule. There are approximately 44 tails being modified under the present program. The big tail installation on the F-102A gives the airplane even better flight characteristics than before. It completely eliminates any effect of pitch-roll coupling. Maneuverability is increased, and aerial maneuvers are accomplished with ease. Big tail models of the F-102As have been coming off the production line of the contractor's San Diego plant since early August of this year.
Buzzfix modification of the F-102A.
In flight tests of the F-102A, a noise and vibration called buzz was encountered in the air inlet ducts at speeds of Mach 1.2 to Mach 1.3. At Edwards Air Force Base, California, design modifications on the intake duct configuration were instigated. It appeared that the duct ramp would have to be extended. This is how the air intake duct looked as it came off the production line, and is the configuration that caused the buzz. After evaluations were completed from various tests, it was decided that an extension of the ramp would eliminate the problem. This is the final modification installed to correct the buzz. It consisted of attaching a large steel plate to the airplane in such a manner that the inlet duct ramp was extended to a position 20 inches forward of the leading edge of the present ramp. This extension was in one piece and extended over a section of the forward radar compartment door. Obviously, this made it difficult to get into the radar bay. The airplane was flown with this configuration, and the noise was eliminated. On production installation, a casting was fabricated in 2 sections. This allows easy access to the radar compartment. The forward part of the extension is attached to the radar door with bolts and the pylon configuration. The door and fuselage structure are strengthened at this point to withstand additional forces. The aft part of the duct extension is gloved to the present ramp. This ensures a good fit. This modification does not adversely affect weight, balance, or performance, and the buzz formerly encountered has been eliminated. Current production models of the F-102A are coming off the production line with a modification as shown.
F-102A side stick installation.
In July of this year, Dick Johnson, the contractor's chief test pilot at Edwards Air Force Base, climbed into the first F-102A to be equipped with a side stick configuration. The control stick was relocated from its center position to the right-hand side of the cockpit to prove out the design concept intended for use in the F-106A airplane. This side stick location, if proven, will allow for the eventual installation of a horizontal position indicator. The HPI, as it is more commonly referred to, is a terrain map display on which the airplane's relative position is indicated. After taxiing to the edge of the runway, the plane is airborne in a matter of seconds. First flight of the side stick airplane was accomplished without incident, and it was flown to Edwards Air Force Base for further testing and evaluation. Many of the contractor's test pilots, as well as Air Force pilots, are currently flight testing this new control concept. It is proving out very well. The side stick is just what the name implies, a control system on the right-hand side of the cockpit. It works the same as the conventional column or stick. For elevator motion, push it forward, and the elevons go down. Pull it back, and the elevons go up. Turning the control to the left or right gives aileron movement to the elevons as they would get with a conventional control stick moved to the left or to the right. Control systems to the elevons is essentially the same as production models. The red button, operated by the thumb, is the trim switch. Some pilots have stated that the transition of standard control to the side stick should be no more difficult than the transition from the straight stick to control wheels. During the middle of August, Major General Albert Boyd, Deputy Commander for Weapon Systems, ARDC, arrived at Edwards Air Force Base to fly the side stick airplane for Air Force evaluation. General Boyd is one of the first Air Force pilots to fly faster than the speed of sound and is well qualified for the F-102A. Takeoff followed immediately. In flight, the airplane handles like the conventional F-102A. Flying with the side stick is just a matter of familiarization. From previous tests and evaluations, several changes were apparent. An armrest is being designed to prevent arm fatigue. The control grip is being reduced in size. With the trim switch repositioned on the control grip and the breakout force reduced, the tendency to over-control while trimming should be lessened considerably. The General flew for 38 minutes and had good flight conditions. On landing, he discussed the characteristics of the side stick airplane with various engineers and Air Force personnel. General Boyd had several constructive comments that will be officially released by the Air Force. Thus, the side stick is proving itself out. If there is any doubt of performing coordinated aerial maneuvers, watch this one with John Fitzpatrick, company test pilot at Edwards. At the present time, flight tests are being continued, and further evaluations will be made as to acceptance of the side stick for the F-106A program.
F-106A production progress.
On August 3rd, 1956, The first F-106A fuselage was lifted from its assembly fixture in the experimental area. It was moved a short distance away and set in a cradle for additional fabrication and wing mating. The wings for this aircraft are being fabricated at the Plant 2 facility of the contractor's San Diego division. The wings of the F-106A are designed to higher structural loads than those of the F-102A. Work on the wing section is on schedule. They will be moved to the experimental assembly area for mating with the prototype fuselage. There are many new features in the F-106A. Among these that are readily discernible are the air intake ducts. They are further aft, affording greater pilot visibility, and contain variable ramp inlets. The duct opening adjusts automatically, depending on speed and altitude of the airplane. The fabrication of every part and the details of every assembly are carefully checked. The production control department keeps a constant check on progress. This keeps fabrication on schedule, including everything from engineering design releases through to hardware. The first move of this fuselage was accomplished 10 days ahead of schedule. Meanwhile, in the same area, work progresses rapidly on the F-106A engine test stand. In reality, it will be a complete fuselage barrel, less the cockpit, with all engine controls and components that are needed for the complete cycle of engine ground tests. This fuselage section will be used as a control system test stand. Engineering data from tests conducted on both the engine and controls test stands aids in design evaluation and product improvement. Airplane number 2, the exact counterpart of number 1, is scheduled for completion 30 days after number 1. Production models will roll off the assembly line in the spring of 1957.
F-106A armament configuration for mock-up.
This is a mock-up of the new F-106A Interceptor. With the designing and building of this airplane, there were certain new configurations recommended for the armament system. The armament will consist of 4 Falcon missiles fired from launchers and 1 Type MB-1 rocket installation fired from a ballistic ejection system. Production airplanes from number 5 on will carry this armament system. This is known as the 1+4 armament arrangement. Development will be continued on the 6 Falcon missile configuration, but on a non-interference basis. Production airplanes number 1 through 4 will have full-length folding missile bay doors and will have structural and space provisions for possible retrofit of the 1+4 armament. The F-106A has 1 full-length armament bay. This reduces the number of actuating doors from 6 to 2 and allows greater versatility in armament weapons. This will be the armament configuration on the new F-106As from number 5 on as they come off the production line in April 1957. On a normal intercept mission, the missiles and rockets are fired automatically by the fire control system. The mission of the weapon system of which this airplane is a part is to provide a weapon system capable of destroying hostile airborne targets under any condition of weather, day or night, from sea level to 60,000 feet at supersonic speeds.
Air Defense Show, George Air Force Base, Victorville, California.
San Bernardino County, in cooperation with the Air Defense Command and the 27th Air Division, commanded by Brigadier General Frank E. Rouse at George Air Force Base, Victorville, California, proclaimed Sunday, September 16th, as Air Defense Day. The purpose of the Air Defense pageant was to present to the public the story of fighter-type aircraft, from World War I to the supersonic F-102A all-weather interceptor. The 327th Fighter Interceptor Squadron was chosen as the host unit for this event. It was the first operational air defense supersonic fighter interceptor squadron to be equipped with the F-102A. The men attached to the 327th Squadron take a keen personal interest in maintaining their airplanes and keep them in top mechanical condition, from the tip of the probe to the tip of the tail. The executive officers, pilots, and flight mechanics of the 327th were planning to put 12 F-102As in the air at one time and fly formation as the climax to this air defense pageant. This would be another first. Split-second timing and careful coordination would be necessary to accomplish this feat. Meanwhile, Colonel Rigney and his officers were discussing ground operations and technical aspects of formation flying for the Air Force show. Major R.L. Embry was in charge of briefings and worked out the final details for takeoff and formation with the 12 pilots assigned to the flight. The air pageant was set off officially with a sonic boom. Colonel Irwin H. Dregney, Wing Commander and Commander 479th Fighter Day Wing TAC, greeted the 27,000 guests who had turned out to watch the exciting show. Dick Powell, famous motion picture and television star, was the official master of ceremonies and paced the show in an amusing fashion. June Allison, his equally famous wife, enjoyed every minute of it. Action began with World War I airplanes taking off and stunting over the stands. Talk about hairbreadth hairy. It's hard to believe that these airplanes played an important role in winning World War I. Yet they were the forerunners of our modern supersonic jet interceptor fighters. World War II planes were larger and faster. The P-38 was one of the fighter planes of this era. Other airplanes added to the color of the show, and the climax was the parade of 12 F-102As past the grandstand. The 12 jets lined up on the runway, 3 abreast and 4 deep. First 3 roared down the runway and into the air. The jets peeled off and lined up in formation behind lead pilot Major R.L. Embry and streaked across the sky. Thus another chapter in aviation history at George Air Force Base was begun. The 327th Fighter Squadron and all of the other cooperating agencies were to be commended for a great show and a job well done.